My name is Jung-soo Kim. I am Surrender. You can find me at Twitter with SurrenderHS. If there is a rival in my group, then it should be Tom, I think, since we played each other so many times and I always lost to him. Yeah, it should be Tom. I really want to beat him. Ferrari. He's one of my favorite Korean player. He's like 6 years older than me, so he treats me like his little brother. But if we have to face each other, then I'm gonna beat him, of course. I think every single Hearthstone player can agree with that EU is the best, since they always have the highest cut for playoffs, and World had top 3 European players for top 4, right? So EU is the best, and I think Asia is the second one. Yeah, we had higher cut for playoffs than America, so I think America is the worst. Then my favorite memory is, I think it's the Worlds in 2015. I was staying in Sixo's place at the time and helping Osaka for his preparation, and I was cheering with Sixo for him. And when he was winning the Worlds, we kept drinking. We were super happy for him. Yeah, that's the most memorable memory.
My name is Chen Weilin, and I'm tom60229, and I have Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, but I didn't use it. Surrender 一直都是一个蛮强的选手啊，那不过他这几年就是比较没有突出的表现，但我觉得他这次比赛应该还是会是一个蛮可怕的对手。我觉得进职业联赛最大的一个肯定就是过去几年的努力，就是转化成被选进这个联赛这样。如果要我选一区比较强的选手的话，虽然私心上很想选亚太区啊，但是整体表现最稳定的，一直以来都还是欧洲区的选手，所以今年也不太例外。我的 ID tom60229是因为我自己英文名字是 Tom， 那这个没什么好说。当然60229的部分是我的小学学号，就是6年2班29号。今年的目标当然是希望职业联赛可以拿冠军。那另外一个的话，我也希望我实况可以越来越好，然后人数越来越多这样。
Potentially one of the biggest matches of the Asia-Pacific region, mainly not for what the results will do in Grandmasters, but it's just two of the most well-known and well-respected players just in the region across the board. Surrender versus tom60229. Let's go straight into the deck list here, as we heard the players just talk about their thoughts on each other, and mainly Surrender always loses to Tom. I feel like that may change today, Gia.
Yeah, he is definitely a favorite on the Bomb Warrior against the ODK Paladin, and this deck is considered favored against ODK Paladin and other decks that just draw a lot of cards, such as Nomi Priest, because, well, when the deck thins out, that means they get to their bombs and they die a lot quicker. And Surrender is rocking the Geppetto Joybuzz in the primary, which we saw him pilot very well to a 2-0 victory against Chun-Su yesterday.
Yeah, and I think the Geppetto, the more I see it, the more I'm just starting to value, in certain decks of course, but just the power of just drawing 2 cards that become some of the easiest playable cards in the game, because they're just 1 mana and they're easy to just slot in. And in this deck, the strengths of that mainly are a lot of the mechs have battle cries, whether that's in the form of removal or in the form of shuffling bombs into the deck. And also the fact that you can 1 mana and then say magnetize stuff is a huge deal as well. So I think the Geppetto is a pretty sick conclusion. And as I said, Surrender is looking good overall. I do like the build of the deck, or everything around the Geppetto as well. I've been harping on about double brawl in main deck for a while for Warrior, and it has happened along with double Omega Devastator, so it's a little bit less card draw with only 1 Acolyte and 1 Town Crier, but overall I think this is a very solid all-round Bomb Warrior.
For sure, and Bomb Warrior in this matchup against ODK Paladin has that two ways of approaches to try and win the matchup, which is one, aggro and do the bombs, and if that's not really working out in your favor, maybe sometimes you just get an early boom. You keep rolling the blast shields and you hold on to Zilliax, and then you can just out heal even the double Holy Wrath over 2 turns. Like, you can get above the 50 over 2 turns, and because it's dealt in increments after the first 25, if you just hold on to your Zilliax and a mech sticks on board, then suddenly you're healing for another 10 and something crazy like that, and then the Paladin doesn't always get there. So I feel like, Tom, the story of this is going to be how the secondary deck can perform.
Right, and that's a big problem, and that's one of the key parts of Grandmasters combined with the Specialist format, is that your primary deck has to, like, if it just fails versus your opponent's deck, then you're almost, on average, starting the series at a 0-1 disadvantage, and it's only best of 3, so your opponent only has to win 1 more game, and they also get to change their deck as well if they have a counter pick. Let's check out Tom's list, though, and see what he has to do. So the initial list, the one that he's going to be starting off with, is a close to standard Holy Wrath Paladin. I think the double consecration is a little bit more common overall, but in general, this is just what Holy Wrath Paladin looks like most of the time.
I think what really stands out to me is the lack of Blood Mage Thalnos as one of the 1-attack minions for the Christology to draw. Instead, he's running like 4 minions, which are not auto-includes in the package, and I used to think Thalnos was an auto-include. So Corsair, an Elven Archer, Soup Vendor, and Acolyte of Pain. And we've been seeing a lot of the 1 Elven Archer, 1 Acolyte of Pain, which rose in popularity after the Chinese Team League played it a lot, and Frozen was also playing that list. The Bloodsail Corsair got less popular because Rogue also got less popular, but for Tom here, it can possibly remove a charge off a Reg Caliber, not completely useless. But yeah, I'm so surprised to not see Thalnos, because just more card draw is what the deck wants in general.
Right, and just speaking about primary lists for now, what does Tom actually have to do to win this game? Or is it so heavily favored, in your opinion, that Surrender just has to not completely whiff or misplay?
I think the game plan is the same for the Paladin, which is just, draw the combo as soon as possible. You're on an even more drastic timer in this matchup because the Warrior, if they have gotten more time to be on boom, they have more time to get to the blast shield and just slip farther and farther away out of range. I just think that Tom needs to be a little bit careful with the timing of the timeouts, as I mentioned a while ago, and also when he chooses to use his heals, because a lot of the time as the Paladin, sometimes you just want a flash of light even for no heal just to keep cycling, but the heal is super relevant here because the bombs can come either in increments or in huge chunks. I feel like the bombs come in pairs.
Yeah, and that is definitely exasperated by the fact that this whole deck is built to draw itself, right? So if you shuffle bombs in, the chances of those bombs going off greatly increase when you're playing against a deck that is predominantly card draw and in a single combo that normally gets it done. So we will see the bombs maybe take a greater toll in this matchup, because it's often that any bombs shuffled in will actually blow up because the deck draws itself, right? So we see the players getting ready here, and I do think Surrender's in as good a spot as possible to take one of these rare wins over the previous world champ.
For sure, these two have faced each other on the world stage, and yeah, Surrender did mention that he's lost to Tom quite a lot, but he also mentioned in his interview yesterday that he spent so much time recently not going out and just preparing,
right,
because he wasn't satisfied with his score in Grandmasters as far, and he did take a win yesterday against Chonsu, and I'm pretty sure he's ecstatic with the Bomb Warrior Bring because he hit 2 super favorables, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's funny actually, those the pieces we just saw about the players just answering the questions, we were the ones interviewing them, and part of the rest of that interview, Surrender was telling me that he felt the previous year, as Tom mentioned in his point about Surrender, he did not do so well, and that isn't good enough, basically. And Surrender was like, this year things get serious, and as we saw in his interview, as you mentioned yesterday, he was like, I've not had a great start, so I've basically gone 100% Hearthstone in my life this week, right, to see if he can make up the difference, and it's been working so far. And if he can 2-0 this week, that is a huge, huge deal, as that will put him overall a 3-3 record, which looks much, much nicer.
Right. And if my eyes did not deceive me, that was a Wild Pyromancer keep from tom60229, which on paper you're like, Pyro, isn't that a card you use for board clears and would rather use against aggressive decks? Well, in this case, the Pyro is just a 3-2. It's just a Bloodfin Raptor. You play it on curve. It's not that easy for the Warrior to answer it, especially when they're not running Weapons Project. And then it just hits for maybe 6 if you're lucky in the matchup. And that 6 damage can be super relevant when you are dealing this specific chunk of 25, which it's very difficult to add more onto that. Maybe you have a True Silver and an Elven Archer, but you just need every single point of damage.
Honestly, I think if it even hits for 3, you're happy, right? Like, that is just 3 damage that the card was never going to do otherwise. So yeah, I really do like the keeps, and it just shows the instant knowledge of a matchup like this, because if you're choosing to bring a deck that has a couple of very one-sided matchups, you make sure you learn how the best way to play those one-sided matchups, especially if they're the bad ones.
Right.
So Tom definitely is going into this with a plan. This is not a rare Holy Wrath Paladin versus Bomb Warrior matchup. This is a pretty common one, especially if you're the Paladin.
Yeah, and Tom already faced with a tough decision if he wanted to use the Flash of Light, again, in the situation where you're forced to use it for the dual purpose of drawing a card and being able to clear the 3/4, even though he's giving up some of his healing measures against the bomb in the future, because he still has to worry about that other game plan that Warrior can use, which is just Smork, and then you don't even get to the point where you can think about dealing the 25 over 2 turns. And I think it was the right call from Tom, and he's going to be pretty upset to see that Surrender has got quite a great bomb curve and minion curve.
This is pretty scary. I do wonder if Surrender actually... So Surrender needs to make a choice now, right? I mean, he did play the Alec on 3, so part of that choice has been made in terms of playing more aggressive, so he's not going to wait and try and shuffle loads of bombs in for a kill. But I think I would lean towards Wrench Caliber a little bit, because it means that there's less chances of removal for the weapon in hand, the blood cells drawn, because there's been no Christology yet. Surrender did go for the minion, which is normally what I would lean towards in general, is just play a minion, because then the minion's on the board and it can keep doing damage.
I did like the minion too, because I think you had a hard read that if Tom had True Silver there, he would play it. And then if the True Silver was still equipped in that case, then you would play your own weapon rather than feeding another minion. But I think now he's just making it very awkward for Tom to do anything. And Tom is expending a timeout as early as now. And I am very confused as to why the Novice Engineer did not come down.
So am I.
Am I missing something?
Let me think. I don't know, is my honest answer. There's probably a reason, and I'm sure plenty of people on Twitter are going to tell us what that reason is.
Yeah.
And I look forward to it, because I'm not sure. Maybe Tom's planning on clearing the board anyway, and because of the timeout, it means that the Novice Engineer would be traded into, which just gives Surrender a trade. Maybe the Novice Engineer pushes 1 or 2 damage later. I'm reaching, but
Yeah,
it kind of makes sense.
Well, I guess so, yeah. I mean, in that case, I would still be inclined to just draw the card. I don't know if the 1/1 body is that relevant, but
And it fits
maybe,
in next turn as well. Like, without this being exactly Ziliax, this turn would have ended with a Novice Engineer on the board.
Right, and
which
then-
is something, right? It's something.
It does, in some worlds, push the 1 damage. And I think, yeah, Tom did not expect to see Ziliax and then have to use 2 spells to clear the whole board instead of just 1. But yeah,
And maybe that's just the way you have to play.
I don't know. But who am I to question a former world champ, right? So Surrender now faced with the option of doing the very low tempo play of weapon and hit face.
Can still play the Eternium.
Yeah.
It just depends if Surrender wants that to potentially get cleared off. We can see that there's a True Silver, of course, but Eternium can get more value later on with, say, a Warpath turn to get more armor, because as you mentioned, one thing that Warrior excels at is staying out of range of these Holy Wrath kills, and that's what one of the only real things that Paladin does, because if you wind back to the previous iterations of Holy Wrath Paladin before rotation, Zola was a great card, because you could actually end up with a few Shivalas, and then you end up just pressuring with big, massive minions. The deck can't do that anymore, because there's nothing that duplicates the minion in hand.
I was gonna say, I think I prefer the hero power to the turn remover if you are
Yeah.
just going for the Wrench Caliber play, because this is a game where you're not quite sure what game plan you're going for just yet. Because the early minion aggression got stomped, but you also did see Tom use both Flash of Light super early, so maybe your bombs can get there. At the same time though, if Tom does manage to just keep cycling and Surrender does not have enough armor to survive that first Holy Wrath, it might not even matter. So I do think the armor up overall just is the safer thing to do.
Tom's going to feel a little bit bad. He knows this Acolyte is going to be 3 mana, draw a card if Surrender chooses that to be the case because the weapon's already equipped. Shield block, definitely not too shabby. I wonder if this is just good enough to be a trade into a Dynamatic hero power. Like, how many things are you really going to hit with Dynamatic in this matchup?
Not very many.
I think you like just getting a 3/4 on the board. You press the hero power. You don't take any damage. Shield block is always good in this matchup. It's not like you need it right now. It's going to be good later on.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a matchup where milking the hero power as often as you can is high value. And I agree that the Dynamatic probably doesn't have too many things it would rather remove.
I guess what's in hand, so Christopher Smith Kangor is a good target for Dynamatic because you kill it without the heals doing too much. But outside of that, I think it's just good to get a 3/4 on the board. It fills the curve nicely.
So it's looking like instead the Militia. Okay, I mean, Dynamatic will get more value this way, and even though you are leaving 2 attack on board, which will almost always go face, he's at least developing this Eternium Rover, which is saying if you leave these 2 minions on board and leave the Eternium Rover, it's gonna gain that armor back anyway.
Nice Hammer of Wrath there. Clean kill on the Eternium Rover.
Yep.
It's a really good turn there for Tom, just being able to get some of his more expensive cards out of the way. One of the issues Holy Wrath partly runs into is they have like 4 or 5 of the expensive cards in hand and end up doing one single thing per turn, which is very slow when you're trying to draw your deck.
Yep.
Now double shield block for Surrender. Definitely not too shabby.
It just feels very awkward because the Dynamatic, if you play it this turn, it's not getting, I mean, it gets as much value as it would have that other turn, and you would have removed the 2 minions sooner, and also it dies straight up to the True Silver Champion.
I think you were okay with it dying to the True Silver because it means the True Silver isn't going face.
That's true.
And you were very okay with dealing 3 extra damage to your opponent, and your opponent dealing 0 damage to you. I think that's just going to be good enough for this turn. He can shield block first if he wants to have one more draw, just to check.
It is just super tough to say because it's looking like Tom has been in a comfortable enough position that he's gonna get to safely go for the 25 over 2 turns, the 50 over 2 turns, in which case Surrender is like, I always need to stay above 50, 54 even, assuming that Tom keeps the other True Silver.
Got to bear in mind as well, as I mentioned, it's one thing that really kind of accelerates out of nowhere is the fact that the quicker Tom draws his deck, the quicker these chain bombs are going to start going off, right? Because he has what, 3, 4 now in the deck? You played the Clockwork Goblin and 2 swings of the previous Wrench Caliber, and then 1 swing there. So that's 4 total. So that's 20 damage is in his deck right now.
Yep.
And Tom's on 21. The Corsair does, the Blood Cell does come out there with the Crystology, which is very, very nice for Tom, just negating the 3 damage. And he's able to heal to be a little bit safer. But still, it's more draw and this is tense.
Yeah, Surrender, I think, has been forced into a position where he has to shield block when he really doesn't want to because of that same reason of milking hero powers, and you'd rather shield block when there's nothing left on board. But yeah, he's not gotten to Dr. Boom, and Tom's had good answers for the bombs so far. So maybe Surrender is just forced into this more aggressive position.
It's definitely a weird point, right? Because Surrender is using shield blocks now, right? Which he kind of has to, because he needed to draw.
Yeah.
But also, yes, he takes some damage, but he's also shuffling more bombs in. So the more Tom draws, the more damage he's going to do to himself.
It just feels awful having to leave the Kangor on board too.
Yeah, the Kangor is a big deal.
Wow, they do come in packs. Whoa, 4 in a row?
Look at Surrender's face!
Oh my god. That one looked like something was exploding too, but the color scheme gets you sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and okay, suddenly the game has turned a bit on its head, and oh my goodness! Wait, that's all of them, right?
Yeah, that's all the bombs gone now, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So there is 0 in deck now, because that was 5.
Okay, now it might get to a point where Tom needs to use Shirvala for heal preemptively, and that means he would have to Baleful it to prevent Surrender from just immediately removing it.
Oh,
And what that in
that's
turn means is that he can
really
only deal
good.
25. Yeah, that's super good too. Oh my
Because
goodness.
Surrender can actually... He needs to clear this board. He needs Kangor gone. And in terms of the Shivali used, Surrender can just not play minions for a while.
Yeah, you're
So
absolutely right.
there's that blank turn, and Tom might feel a little bit risky about trying to just do a blank Shivala to try and get an attack the following turn. And Tom's only on 6. He will heal to 8 with the swing of the True Silver. But ooh, this is this could be the game turn for Surrender. This turn could decide the outcome of this game. I think he has to kill the Kangor though.
Yeah, the
and he
quad
can't-
Warpath hero power seems super clean.
Right. Because
Uh,
and also the Dynamatic plus X actually does kill off a Shivala just based on the board as well.
A key point though is that he's out of bomb generators. I think both Wrench Caliber and both Clockwork
Right.
Goblin, and there's no Seaphoriums in the list. So that remaining damage will have to come from minions sticking.
Oh wait, what?
How many were
Miss-
there?
That must have been the last one. I apologize to everyone, but I thought that was all of them gone. There must have been a sneaky one that I didn't count for.
So the extra 1 health is actually super intense.
my.
I mean, super relevant. But what burst does Surrender actually have? None of these minions have charge. Nothing has stuck on board.
Dr. Boom doesn't do anything now.
Boom Mad Genius summons no bombs, you're right. But
Blastmaster Boom
oh, sorry,
summons
yeah,
no
yeah.
bombs.
Yeah, Blastmaster
Before
Boom.
someone gets at us for naming them the wrong thing.
I mean, I was right too. Because
Okay,
Boom
well,
Mad,
yeah,
it doesn't
there
summon
are many
bombs
cards that don't summon bombs.
now or tomorrow or the next day.
Stranglethorn Tiger does not summon bombs.
Yeah,
Good to
learn
know.
Something new every day. But Boom Mad
okay.
Genius might be the out because it can get Kaboom. It can get the Zap Cannon. Kaboom won't cut it here because Tom will swing with the True Silver, of course. But yeah, now Surrender has a way of dealing with this Shirvala, and now he only has to stay above 25.
Yep.
If you go
I guess
for the
26.
Yeah.
Because of the
Elven
Archer.
Archer, of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Because he's used 2 True Silvers now, right?
Yes.
So it's 20. He needs to stay out above 26. I quadruple check. Yeah, it's 26 is the max reach any given turn.
Right.
This is very clean because it means that this. Oh, so clean. In fact, it froze. It means the Devastator actually kills off
Yeah.
this, and most importantly, without attacking Shivala. So now Tom has to clear the board
Oh, that's great.
because
though.
I don't think he can afford to take any damage because one magnetize, and it's
Okay.
game.
So this is actually super clutch because if he goes for the Consecrate this turn, and I'm pretty sure he will with Shrink Ray, that means he can beat the 1 armor out from Surrender. But what he does not beat is the second shield block in hand. If he thinks Surrender, I'm pretty sure he knows Surrender doesn't have Boom Mad Genius by this point, and he's not going to play around that top deck. But if he puts Surrender on having the second shield block, it may just be like correct to go for the half and half Holy Wrath right now. And
It's
just,
a 50-50
yeah.
to win the game, and I feel like continuing the game makes it not 50-50.
So it's just a question of, do you think it's 50% that, or lower, that Surrender has shield block in hand or draws it next turn, or the Blastmaster Boom? And it's too hard to make these calls. I could not tell you the correct way to go about it, but because Tom has chosen to not take this 50-50, Surrender will survive.
And that's probably, depending on what he draws next, has survived enough to win this game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because there's just not enough damage. Well, I guess there's the problem of clearing the Shivala itself.
Right, that's the key one.
Yeah.
He needs to be able to kill Shivala.
Yeah.
But now I believe there's the 1 Militia Commander left in the
Yes.
deck, so it gets a bit more likely. And also this turn, he could shield block and just play Blastmaster Boom.
Well, there's this thing he can do where he doesn't play minions still, and then Tom is definitely fatiguing if he goes for that
true.
game plan. Tom has no more healing with the Flash of Lights already used, and the Shirvala, if it has no minions to attack to, cannot heal either. So this is actually a very tricky spot. I don't know if you go for the Town Crier, because just the Militia Commander on its own is not a guaranteed kill onto the Shirvala. you need something to
But
proc
the
the
town
divine
crier
shield.
is as well.
True.
So it depends. The idea of if the Shivala has to stick to win the game,
Yeah.
then anything Surrender does, even if it heals Tom up to full,
Yeah.
wins him the game, right? Because if he kills Shivala, Tom has no cards that do anything, so he just dies.
And yes, I think Surrender is very aware that probably the majority of his deck can deal that 1 damage
Right.
somehow. So he's gonna go for, I think this is 100%.
So Shivala will heal Tom, but Tom's health is now kind of no longer the problem. The fact that he could die from Boom is no longer an issue. It's more, does he have a way to win? And I actually don't think he does now.
He doesn't, because we can see that Surrender has the answer for Shivala. But from Tom's perspective, I think you just definitely go in with this now. I don't know what the very last card is.
Well,
Oh, sorry, he doesn't have the mana. If the Christology can draw the last thing.
yeah, he would have done it though, right? If Christology would have drawn, he would have done it the previous turns. Oh,
What's
oh
that?
yeah, it's his
Wait.
second time out.
Yeah.
Surrender's loving it.
Oh, yeah.
Surrender's loving life right now.
What was he actually on 3 cards left in deck last turn? Because I could have sworn it was a 50-50 last turn, but then he still had 2 in deck this turn. Maybe there's a bit of an error with the...
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So if
But-
it wasn't a 50-50, then it makes a lot more sense to hold
Right.
off that turn too.
If only Surrender had a brawl, he could have pulled out the Cheval. Okay.
Yeah, this is completely locked out of the game for Tom. And even though this game looked like it was going in Tom's
Wow.
favor, sometimes just 5 bombs in a row into the 6-1, not very far off, can make people do desperate things.
Yeah, and you have to look as well. The Crystal Smith Kangor stuck on the board for a couple of turns, which provided Tom with a lot of healing. The second that was cleaned up, say on the turn it was played, the bombs just killed Tom as well. So the game could have been, or could have gone a little bit quicker for Surrender. It was very close, and you do see how Paladin has windows to actually get there in the matchup. It's not like 100% Warrior favored every single time, but yeah, the Surrender did look fairly comfortable as soon as he had that shield block. So that was game number 1, and maybe Surrender is just going to 2-0 this with his favored matchup. We'll see. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with some more Grandmasters.
Dalaran will be ours! Once we land, you know what to do! No we don't. You didn't tell us to play it. I didn't think I had to. It's perfectly obvious. Bank! I am to be robbing the bank! I take henchmen for vault smashing and shiny stealing! Plan is obvious! It's a start, yes, but...
You won't get a single coin unless you take care of the city's guards. Let's rip open Violet Hole and unleash the prisoners on the city. That'll keep the guards busy.
Certainly, but that's not...
No! First, we must sow chaos in the streets.
I got rockets. Anyone need rockets? Try to see the big picture. Shiny, shiny, shiny.
We have to break their will before we can loot, you fools!
Please, everyone, please. Let's drop some rockets to the city. Oh, big candle. And then we just take the whole shebang wherever we want. Yes! Finally, you're exactly right.
Seriously?
That's dumb.
Ah, weak candle. Just wait till second gear kicks in. Yes! It's just like I said. We're going to take Dalaran for all that it's got. It's a genius plan. It's simple. It should have been obvious. And absolutely nothing will go wrong.
So, genius, how do we land?
One night, I was called on to scry. But what is this symbol I spy? It's my own crystal ball. Yes, I'll answer the call. And the others will come by and by. That's right. We be calling a team in. The Masters of Platin. and scheming. By this candle a-glowing, I surely be knowing whose gold will be once more a-gleaming.
Surrender versus Tom going into game number 2, and this is where Specialist throws all the things you know about the game just out of the window straight away, as both players are moving on to their secondary decks. So let's check them out. But we've got Surrenders first, and this one is pretty spicy as far as I'm concerned. Barista Lynching is a super underrated card, at least in my opinion. I play that card in many decks that people tell me I shouldn't, but I think the card's cool. But the weapon removal, along with the extra bomb generation, and the Elysiana, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on this specific matchup, but it's not the end of the world having it in there.
Yeah, because Tom's secondary also gives him a way around fatigue, maybe there's some worlds where the Elysiana gets some relevance, but I think that the C4 Bomber is the real kicker in this one. Just the extra bomb generations. We saw Surrender just needed one extra bomb at some points to get to lethal Tom, and the Harrison Jones can also remove a True Silver, which is very important for Tom to have that extra reach. It's just a bit sad, I think, for Surrender that he has to remove both Acolyte and Eternium Rovers. The Eternium Rovers are another way to get armor generation, and we saw last game that he was lacking some card draw, so the Acolyte seems like it would be quite important. But at the same time, with the heavier minion curve, maybe he doesn't need as much card draw.
Right, also as well, Barista kind of acts like card draw if it can duplicate, and maybe there's the dream of Clockwork Goblin into Omega Devastator as an aggressive push, and then you just Barista them anyway to get the copies back, or to generate additional copies, should I say. So yeah, I think Surrender's deck's kind of cool. Like, I really like this secondary deck and the sideboard that he's done for it. I think it opens up some options, and most importantly, it has enough broad extra late game that it's not super laser focused on. I can only play this deck if in this one specific matchup.
Right.
As we can see, that is probably the one you play in the mirror, for example. But let's go truly strange as we move on to Tom's secondary deck. I spoke a little bit about Holy Wrath Paladin struggling with how narrow it is, and I think we see that reflected in the tertiary deck. But then let's look at the secondary one. What is he aiming to do here?
Yeah, this is just aiming to provide boards that can deal that extra damage when you can't get there with the Holy Wrath combo, because the warrior can just armor out of the range. When you run the mech package of the Whelps and the Prelate along with Undertaker, then that's just infinite value in theory. It sometimes is too slow, but sometimes just the annoyances of the Whelps on board is too tough for the warrior to deal with, because brawls are not a clean way to answer those. And if just one of those 7/7s can go face, sometimes that allows you to use the Holy Wrath and deal the remaining damage for the lethal. And what's interesting is that when we see this type of secondary deck, usually people are running Kangor's Endless Army and the Mechano Egg as well. But I think I'm starting to see now why Tom doesn't have the Blood Mage Thalnos, so that it's not there to dilute the Undertaker pool of death rattles that it gets. And I'm not sure I completely agree with it, but I know that running the Whelp over the egg seems more convenient, because you're not forced to have to shrink rate to pop your own egg, because the Whelps can attack.
And that's it, isn't it? That, you know, the sideboards do have a limited number of cards you can change, and I think there are nods to, you know, in the primary deck, as you mentioned with the Thalnos, to this sideboard. And this Undertaker's not going to start getting to, you know, crazy levels of death rattles and stacks of the Immortal Prelate, but it is there to stop fatigue and provide something to keep some level of pressure on. As we saw then, Tom wasn't that much damage away from just winning the game, but he just never could create that damage is the problem, right? There was nothing left in the deck to push that extra, you know, 8 or so damage, and the Undertaker is definitely going to help out with that. The only worry is that Tom has to cut stuff.
Yeah.
You can't just add these cards in and say it's fine, we'll just keep playing. There are cuts, and the cuts actually being the one timeout and equality, Hammer of Wrath, the Soup Vendor, and even the Elven Archer means that there's some level of card draw removed and also some level of removal gone. So he is weaker to say the more aggressive lines, I feel, that Surrender can play. So let's just get straight into it. Surrender currently 1-0 up with this Bomb Warrior, and Tom moving on to this slight mech and Death Rattle package to see if it'll help him out in this matchup.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to highlight is that Lightforged Blessing is also in the secondary deck, and I was like, I don't really like this card when I played it. It's very difficult to get it onto the Pyro for a ton of value unless your opponent is exactly Token Druid. But because you're running the mech package, you can use the other end or the first end of the Twin Spell to just tack onto a large minion, and that heals for a lot because the lifesteal is not always necessarily on the fancy Pyro combos. It just is good on a big minion. And Surrender, not the greatest choices with his Omega Assembly, but just having something to curve out into, even if it's like turn 4, I guess it's not on curve then, but just having threats.
Yeah, having something to play that is an armor up pass. But also as well, just a note on the Lightforged, I like it mainly because in a matchup like this, one card slot in your deck that is effectively 2 cards seems powerful, right? You get to do the lifesteal thing twice for 1 slot in the deck. And I think just being able to get that more value out of it is going to be pretty good.
Yeah. So Surrender, this is looking like how game 1 started. You know, just a Pyro
3/4.
Yeah.
And Tom has a Flash of Light to
Yes.
kill the 3/4.
Deja
That's actually
vu.
really funny.
Well, he could use the Lightforged in this case.
That's true. Doesn't need to heal though, right? I think the Lightforge on average gets you more heal than the Flash of Light. And the Flash of Light draws you a card as well.
Yeah, the cycle I think is the deciding factor. Because I do think Surrender will just drop the Amalgam here. But maybe he's thinking about Shield Slam? It's sketchy because this is the secondary deck where there are 7/7s.
Yeah.
So
And also as well, your opponent, like Tom still has to play a spell
yeah.
to make this trade happen, very similar to the previous game, or exactly the same as the previous game. And if Tom's using spells, then the spells aren't good for Tom to use right now. Like we saw previous game, Flash of Light with 0 heal, just draw a card, is fine, but it isn't good. So I think Surrender's happy, even if this does get traded off.
Completely agree, you hit the nail in the head there, and I'm just really looking forward to turn 5 when Tom can start coining Mechanical Whelp into Mechanical Whelp, and Surrender's like, Dynomatics don't even touch these. And
Maybe
that's only the
good.
first
Maybe
end
Surrender
of it.
can just deal with 4 damage a turn for a while.
I think it stacks up super quick, especially against Holy Wrath Paladin. Like, as we kept mentioning, every single point of damage matters. And Tom did agree with what you said about the Lightforged Blessing on average being more useful. And maybe he just also wanted the cycle because maybe he didn't want to be locked into Hammer of Wrath. Maybe wanted to get something like True Silver if another 3-drop were to come down next turn.
Also as well, just a small thing for the twin spell aspect of the Lightforged Blessing. If you play it, you effectively don't change any cards. Your hand size is the same, and he might not be planning on using it for a long time. So he would actually get his hand more clogged by using Lightforged Blessing than if he used the the Flash of Light, which just recycles itself.
So Surrender, I honestly haven't played these secondary decks against each other well enough to know if the Warrior can still get there just by staying out of range and then like continuously answering the Undertaker. But because we noted that Tom removes so much aggro stuff, I think the Warrior should be very inclined to just curve out as much as possible, even if it means foregoing some armor. In this case, it doesn't. And it still works out for Surrender that next turn he can go Wrench Caliber and Hero Power and, you know, proceed according to plan. And the boom on curve is absolutely huge as well.
So there's Mechanical Whelp. It can be cleaned up pretty easily with a Shield Slam for the second half of it, of course.
So notably, Tom is not running Ziliax in any of his lists. So I don't know if Surrender is under so much pressure to clear this up right away. The punish that I can think of is Shrink Ray or Equality and something like that, in which case Tom gets his 7/7 and you lose your whole board. But I'm not sure if it's worth foregoing the damage you do to face by just sending everything to face now.
You only missed 3 though, right? It's only 3 damage he missed this turn to completely clear the board.
So if you were going to go for the shield block, armor up, shield slam play, I don't think he would not have been able to fit the Omega Assembly. So now I feel like Surrender's just going to take this Omega Devastator and plop it down, go straight to the face.
I mean, that would be completely reasonable too. If you can just play another Yeti, then that seems fine.
Or he could go for the Wrench Caliber and just load up the boom a bit more.
There could still be shield block, shield slam. If he really wants to, he is going to go for it.
Okay.
He just wants to get rid of it. I don't think he wants any weird things to happen.
Okay, so this is the half and half play, which I think works out really well, and now it's super telling of how Surrender plans to win this game, and it is not by getting out of range, because you never face tag 7 in that case. He just wants to have the maximum pressure on board, play for maximum tempo.
Just wants to kill him.
Yes. Ooh, the Corsair doesn't fit quite this turn. And the boom on curve.
Especially after the swing.
How does Tom answer that?
Which boom on curve? Definitely like Blastmaster here.
Yep. The one that summons 13/13 worth of stats.
You don't need the rush so to do anything.
Oh, yeah.
If this was a more minion-based fight between both players, I think you would use Dr. Boom first and then Blastmaster Boom, so you can choose trades. But there's no minions on the board, right? You don't need them to have rush. They end up just attacking when you need them to anyway. And the heal's good for Tom, but as you said, this is just a lot of damage, and there's even go face with everything and
Warpath. Yeah. This could very well be lethal.
Jeez.
So 13 to face, and then on average, each bomb will deal 2.5. So 2.5 times 6 is 15. That's lethal to me. 13 plus 15, but yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't always work out that way. But man, how are you not cashing this in?
It's not even the biggest selling point to me for this turn. I think Surrender's going for it. Is that you're not even committing that much. It's a Warpath and a Boom. You want Boom to do damage, so why not? And there's a nod from Surrender.
What?
Oh, there's a 4, there's a 2, there's a 4, there's a...
Just short. Okay, I guess it was slightly under average because a minion remained. And
so he can hit the minion. Yeah.
Right. But it's not a bad outcome because you clear the Kangor without it healing. Your opponent's at 1. They're not running their second timeout.
He's just going to go for the lethal.
There you go.
Did he get it?
Nope.
He did not get it. Okay, and that is just going to be game. Fair play to Tom. He had nothing he could do, mainly. That turn was played very quick, but in a brief breakdown, as we see Surrender as the winner. He could not do the multiple things he needed to do. He could not clear the board, which obviously he needed to do or he'd die from the return swing, but he couldn't clear the board and heal, which meant he was just going to die no matter what. So he had to just go for your opponent's on 25, press the Holy Wrath and hope for the best, and he missed. But big deal for Surrender now, because that means he is going to even his score up and go actually 3-3 this week. So Surrender told us in his interview that yes, I've focused fully on Hearthstone this week because I'm upset with my results so far, and now boom, 2 wins done. Did as much as he could, and he's evened up at 3-3, whereas Tom is now going to drop down just a little bit now, and Tom is going to be on, what, 3-2,
4-2, I think.
Sorry, 4-2 with his win yesterday. Yeah, I didn't count that.
You called it boom 2 wins for Surrender, but I think it was more like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I mean, the way he played that game was actually pretty cool, actually. Yeah. He took down the Whelp, which could have caused him trouble, because if that lived, then there's a world where it gets proc to maybe Lightforge Blessing comes down, heals for tons, and then Tom can actually survive that kind of aggressive play. So it's pretty huge there, but congratulations to Surrender taking that win. And again, I feel like Warrior just felt like a very, very strong pick this week, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And Surrender, even knowing that the risk of running into Hunter was pretty high because a lot of people were putting that as the best deck right now, or at least one of the best to go into Mage, the Bomb Warrior versus Hunter matchup is still in contention. I think most people are agreed that it's slightly Hunter favored, but not by a whole lot. And then the Bomb Warrior still beats many things that are good against Mage, which is like the Holy Wrath Paladin, it beats Rogue. So I think the meta read was great for Surrender, and he also happened to run into a Druid, and Bomb Warrior beats that too.
Yeah, and I think for me as well, Bomb Warrior right now, there's some flex spots, right? But you know what the flex spots can do. So I feel like it's one of the most solved lists out of everything, with Rogue up in the air, especially right after nerfs. There's still tons of different builds of Hunter. Holy Wrath Paladin has just a couple of builds, but even Mage, people are building new Mage every single day. So I think also just the consistency of how good just having a list that you know is good is worth something in itself. And while we set up and make sure Surrender's ready for his second winning interview in 2 days, we are just going to go to a quick break. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Hearthstone Masters. Today, we're going to share one of the biggest changes coming to Hearthstone in 2019, an entirely new competitive format called Specialist. Specialist will be the default competitive format for Hearthstone Masters. From online Masters qualifiers to live Masters Tour events, to the pinnacle of competition, Hearthstone Grandmasters. Ready to learn how the new Specialist format works? Let's dive right in. In this new competitive format, players select 3 30-card decks to bring to a Specialist tournament. The catch? All decks must be from the same class. In this regard, Specialist is a major departure from most other competitive formats. Amongst every player's 3 Specialist decks, one is designated as the primary deck. The player's other 2 decks are designated as secondary and tertiary decks. There are no special limitations placed on a player's primary deck aside from regular Hearthstone deck construction rules. However, a player's secondary and tertiary decks must share at least 25 cards in common with their primary deck. In other words, secondary and tertiary decks must mirror the primary deck with up to 5 cards swapped out. It is important to point out that duplicate cards count when comparing to a primary deck. For example, if you want to include 2 copies of Twilight Drake in your secondary deck, and there are no copies of Twilight Drake in your primary deck, then you must spend 2 swaps to include both cards. Unique or not, if a card isn't in your primary deck, it counts towards the 5-card difference limit. A player's primary deck is important for another reason. Whenever a new match starts, both its players must begin by piloting their primary deck. Only after the first game concludes can you choose to swap into your secondary or tertiary deck. You do not announce which of your decks you will be using in the next game, and you do not have to swap. After every game, this process repeats, allowing players to swap or stay until the match concludes. Importantly, you can swap to any of your decks between games, primary, secondary, or tertiary, including returning to your primary deck if you have previously swapped out of it. And those are all the rules for Specialist, Hearthstone's new official competitive format. So what are you waiting for? Get out there and start brewing your own primary, secondary, and tertiary decks to get a jump start on the new format and innovate like the pros.
Let the battle begin! Dalaran will be ours! Once we land, you know what to do! No we don't. You didn't tell us to play it. I didn't think I had to. It's perfectly obvious. Bank! I am to be robbing the bank! I take henchmen for vault smashing and shiny stealing! Plan is obvious! It's a start, yes, but...
You won't get a single coin unless you take care of the city's guards. Let's rip open Violet Hole and unleash the prisoners on the city. That'll keep the guards busy.
Certainly, but that's not...
No! First, we must sow chaos in the streets.
I got rockets! Anyone need rockets? Try to see the big picture! Shiny, shiny, shiny!
We have to break their will before we can loot, you fools!
Please, everyone, please! Let's strap some rockets to the city! Oh, big candle! And then we just take the whole shebang wherever we want! Yes! Finally, you're exactly right!
Seriously?
That's dumb.
Weak candle! Just wait till second gear kicks in! Yes! It's just like I said! We're going to take Dalaran for all that it's got. It's a genius plan. It's simple. It should have been obvious. And absolutely nothing will go wrong.
So, genius, how do we land?
We are back, and Surrender did just take a win over Tom, so I do believe we can just get straight into his interview, as I think he is ready, and he's standing by for us. Hey, Surrender, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. So first off, congratulations on the win. So you're 2-0 this weekend. You told us that you weren't happy with your results leading up to this weekend. How are you feeling now that you've put a lot of work in this week and it's paid off?
Yeah, as I told you, I didn't like my result, so I felt a lot of pressure while I'm playing. So, yeah, so I try to drink tea during my matches,
Yeah.
and it helped me a lot.
Okay, awesome. And how were you feeling going against Tom as well? Because you said in your interview at the Player Summit that you always lose to Tom. So were you a bit nervous going into it, or was the matchup good enough?
Oh, playing against Tom is kind of hard, but I knew that the matchup is really good for me, so I had confidence. So it was okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask in particular, once you both move to your secondary decks, do you still feel favored as the Bomb Warrior?
Oh, yeah, because I also have more bombs in my deck, so I think it's still favored for Warrior.
And I just want to ask how you were feeling, because when in game one, when all the bombs kept going off one after the other, did you think you had lethal because there was still the one bomb left?
Oh, yeah, I was almost like I was praying for it.
Yeah, it was really close. It looked impressive to me, at least. And you did get there 2-0. So now I believe you are 3-3. Is it 3-3?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, you are 3-3 in the league. So congratulations on evening up your score. And I look forward to you going into the positive results. So good job.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, I just had to double check because I just scribbled and couldn't read my own handwriting on my notes there, so apologies. But yeah, Surrender is 3-3 now, and he was, it's going to be good when, yes, you go against someone who you respect and value as a very difficult opponent in the form of Tom, but when you have a matchup that you just know what to do, it's going to be so much more relaxing. But